So Auditors and I are just going to take you through a few headlines and highlights of 2019 and some of our achievements and successes throughout the year. We're going to do this a bit of a tag team. So as a start, our membership has grown from 9 founding audit firm members, as we mentioned before, in 2015, to now have a total of 47 audit firms as of now. We've already got a couple of new audit firms that have been approved that are intending to join in January. So that number is continuing to grow and increase, and it's been very exciting. Certainly things also like SEDEX, as Kelly Jo just mentioned, about requiring their firms to be members of APSCA by the end of June in order to continue auditing for SEDEX is very helpful to continuing to grow our membership.
I think one thing that is a fact we can kind of say with confidence is that when the founding members sort of got this rolling and the first board got together, we didn't expect that there would be 47 firms that do this work. And frankly, it may still be the case that there are some who are saying to do this work that don't actually do this work, and that's what APSCA is here for, to make sure that those kinds of players are recognized for who they are and recognized for the fact that they are not part of this organization. But the enthusiasm with which the association has been embraced, as evidenced by this real sharp increase in the number of memberships, is a wonderful thing and is strong evidence both of the need for APSCA and for the value it's going to bring to those firms that do demonstrate credibly that they are indeed professional social compliance audit firms.
Thanks very much. Our audit firm, our auditor members has grown obviously exponentially because we started off at 0. And so as of this morning, we had 4,138. It continues to astound us all at the number of social compliance auditors that are out there and getting them enrolled. Again, it's like Audit said, we didn't realize there was 47 audit firm members, and when we first started, we sort of expected around 2,500 individual auditors. So to have well over 4,000 and continuing to grow is actually quite a surprise and I guess a shock to us as well. But we do know there's still more people out there, and what we really want to encourage everybody to do is if there's, whether they're an employed and a social compliance auditor, right? We're focused only on the social compliance auditors. If there's other employed social compliance auditors or subcontract or freelance auditors that you're working with, we really would like to see them come into the system. We recognize that, that there are a lot of additional people out there, but we really want to make sure that we know who's operating in this space as we're moving through. Some of the value of that is that also if there are some integrity issues that are taking place, that once they, when those issues get identified, that the auditors have already signed the code and standards of professional conduct, we have their details, we can put them through that disciplinary process. We're here to enhance the professionalism and credibility of the industry, and I think our ability to be able to identify as well the ones that are not meeting that is extremely important. Audit says it all the time, or actually Greg I think is the one that says it all the time, is that APSCA really has come to life at the point that our first audit firm, our first individual auditor, and we've actually got 2 now that have had their membership revoked because of bringing disrepute to the industry by some of their unethical behavior. And so that's really important that, that if we are using subcontractor and freelance, please get them into the system, get them identified so that we can end up tracking any issues that may happen and occur.
Indeed, that is an incredibly impressive number, 4,138, 4138. You should make that your bank card pin, Rana, and let me borrow it a little bit later. But to the point that Rana was making, our job as an association isn't to grow that number necessarily, right? We're not looking for a magic figure. We don't want to get to 5,000 or 6,000 or whatever it is. We want whatever that number to be to represent the number of credible professionals who are in this field. And so it's quite likely that as the exam process goes through and the winnowing continues, that that number will decrease, right? And that is not a sign of regression, but actually a sign of APSCA stepping forward. Because that's what our role here is to make sure that whoever is carrying that APSCA badge is a true professional, and whatever that number ends up being is the number of credible players who truly are doing the work that is encapsulated by the code and standards of professional conduct that APSCA has put forward. So it's very gratifying to see this enthusiasm and to see this surge in numbers. And I just want to point out that the expectation is that those numbers will be culled, will be rationalized, will come down to the true field that is representative of the profession, and not simply, as unfortunately has been the case for all the 20-odd years that this industry has been in place, not simply a question of someone saying, hey, I can do that, and not having to justify their qualifications, but simply by virtue of being a warm body, go out there and do an audit. That's not acceptable anymore. We're here to make sure that the people that are calling themselves auditors truly deserve to, and by contrast, or by extension rather, provide meaning to that. So now that you go out there and you say you are a social compliance auditor, that has more meaning, that has more value. It is something that you will say with greater pride, with greater enthusiasm, because it took some getting. It's not just a claim anybody can make. Not everyone can say they're a doctor. Not everyone can say they're an accountant. Not everyone can say they are a social compliance auditor. 4138, yep, pin number.
4138. Well, the problem was last night it was 4134, so the number's continuing to grow. I can't change my pin every day. So this is actually just giving you a little bit of a the breakdown of where our numbers in percentages are. So as I said earlier, 1% CSCAs, so we're very excited about that. 32% are ASCAs, Associate Social Compliance Auditors, and 67% are registered level auditors, which means that they are working their way towards that CSCA level through the examination process. So this slide will now transition into giving you the breakdown of our gender and the various countries that our auditors are located in. One of the things that's been really interesting, when we were preparing for our meeting yesterday morning, and we were going back through some of the history, some of the older slides, the one thing that really hasn't changed throughout time is the gender breakdown of the auditors. From when we only had 2,000 auditors to now that we've got over 4,000 auditors, we still have about 58% that are male, 42% that are female, and we do have a small handful of auditors that identify as other. So it's been very interesting that those percentages have maintained throughout the time. Obviously, no surprise that the largest number of auditors are based in China. There's about 38% of the auditors that are based in China. And then, the numbers obviously come down to 7% in India and 6% in Turkey. 42% makes up the other 93 countries. So we currently have auditors that are located in 93 different countries, or 96 different countries, sorry. Which China being the largest one. So herein lies one of our challenges. I'm just going to sit down for a moment. So herein lies one of our biggest challenges, right? It's just simply the number of languages that we have that all of our auditors, over 4,000 auditors are advanced in. 97 different languages when it comes to written, and 107 different languages when it comes to spoken. And that's a real challenge. I mean, one thing that certainly I didn't appreciate in the very beginning when we first started expanding beyond English was the amount of time and difficulty it is to ensure that you accurately translate information, whether it's the questions, the scenarios, the auditor handbook, etc. Also, when you come down to this end on the far right-hand side, there's 17 people that only speak, or that are the only ones that speak that language, right? So there's 17 languages that only one person speaks. So obviously, right now we're focused on the top 4 languages, and we're working our way through those languages, and we will be working on a way in which that we can identify and address the less common languages, but obviously still very important languages.
What this graph actually speaks to quite loudly and clearly is the expanse of coverage, right? It's one thing to say we've got 4,138 auditors. That's impressive, right? But when you say that they're spread out over 96 different countries, right? And between them, they cover 97 different languages and in writing and 107 different languages in speaking. And you truly get the sense of how global, how worldwide this industry is. And that further enhances the importance of having a standard setting professional body, and also makes clear the extent of the challenge when it comes to things like an examination process, as Rana said. Now, fortunately for us, most of those 18 people where there's only one language, only one person that writes in that language, it's not the only language they write in, right? So those 18 people also speak English or some other language. So we're not going to have too many cases of there is an individual who cannot be tested in anything other than Klingon or some name an obscure language. So we won't have that big a challenge. But the idea is clear, right? That to go through the 4,138 and have all of them covered is going to be an arduous process that will take some time. And as Rana said, and as anybody rationally approaching this will agree, we're going to start by tackling the most popular languages and work our way down to the ones that have only one or two practitioners that are fluent in them. So it's going to be quite a ride coming up on the linguistic front.
And we appreciate your support on that one. So as we look at our member auditors, 79%, and this was actually really interesting because I think a lot of people feel that a lot of the auditors are subcontractor freelance auditors, but 79% of the auditors that are enrolled with APSCA have been identified as being employed by the member firm. And then 13% are subcontractors, 6% are freelance, and there's approximately 1% that are no longer affiliated with a member firm. Now, every auditor that becomes enrolled in APSCA at the time of enrollment must have been put forward by a member firm. We do not enroll any auditors at the moment that are not associated with a member firm. The auditors, so that 1% of the auditors that are still in the APSCA system, the reason that just because you're no longer attached to a member firm doesn't mean that you lose your APSCA membership, because APSCA is the Association of Professional Social Compliance Auditors. So once those auditors get enrolled, they do stay in the system. However, we do recognize the importance of an auditor and the process that the audit firm brings, from the quality side of things, et cetera. And so the auditors cannot use their APSCA membership number unless they're conducting that audit on behalf of an APSCA member firm. But they do not lose their membership with APSCA unless they decide not to pay their individual membership fees or down the track once they become certified and they don't conduct their continuous professional development, et cetera. So now as we look at some of the achievements in 2019, and certainly 2019 has really been focused on ensuring that all three parts of the exam have been rolled out in 4 different languages. So we've been really focused on that. And when we were here about this time last year, we were talking about how we piloted part 1 of the exam in English. And we launched part 1 of the exam, I think, a week or 2 weeks after our AGM last year. In the January, we actually then piloted the exam in simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, and Spanish. We did that in January, and then a couple of months later went on to launch the exam. And so part 1 has been going for the majority of 2019 in those 4 different languages. Part 2 is currently available in English, and people can now start scheduling part 2 in simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, and Spanish. And the exams can be set anytime after the 2nd of January next year. We did pilot all 3 of those languages during 2019, and then launch part 2, and then we went on to pilot part 3 in October, November, which led to our first certified auditors. Part 3 will relaunch again in a couple of months' time, but we're really focusing on starting to get those auditors through part 2 of the exam. One of the other things that we did partway through the year, and Kelly Jo talked a little bit about it in her presentation this morning, was about various enhancements to the data system. And we've been very focused on recognizing that we need to continue to evolve, and this is about assisting the members to make it easier, whether it's for invoicing, for requesting invoicing, for exams, for ensuring that you understand whether the auditor's ready to sit the exams. And so we did a deep dive on our data system, decided to stay with the data system that we have, and we're working with IT developers on making various enhancements. So you will be hearing and learning more about that as we go through over the next couple of months. We engaged with a part-time ethics and integrity manager sort of partway through the year, and we spoke a bit this morning about a disciplinary process, and we'll talk a little bit later about that as well. Sort of throughout quarter three, as I mentioned before, we went on to launch and pilot part 3 of our exam, and we met with our IT people to develop the timeline for those further enhancements as well. And then we were really excited sort of partway through quarter 4 to sort of hit that 4,100 auditors and sort of continuing to grow. And then, of course, the pinnacle is the announcement of our CSCAs.
That is indeed the pinnacle. When we first got this organization off the ground, the daunting task before us was clear. And I spent this morning reflecting a little bit on that, so I'm not going to repeat myself, because I know the vast majority of you were there already and probably don't want to hear all that all over again. But the bottom line there is that the end goal, truly, what the holy grail, was that licensed auditor. And I said this morning that we don't always get to become aware of living history while it's happening. We sort of recognize that only after the fact. But today we really are going to be doing that, because that threshold is going to be crossed when we have the 41 CSCAs presented in an hour or so. The suspense keeps building up. And many of them, about 15 of them, are actually in the room. So I am really looking forward to shaking their hands and to sort of unveiling them to you, because that is as substantive, palpable, and real a measure of success as anything you can hope for us to have made it this far, despite all the challenges, despite the history, the 5 failed attempts or stepping stones, if you wish to be charitable to them, before us. To have gotten to this place is truly, truly historic, and I am so thrilled to be here, and so grateful that many of you will be here to witness this moment, and very much looking forward to many such more moments to come and future meetings.
So just to talk a little bit about our strategy, and APSCA developed our first strategic plan back in 2017, and we've really kept with our pillars. We've made sure that everything we've done has been to achieve our vision and our mission. They fall under 3 different pillars, which is validation, which is obviously working towards the examination process, the governance, which is from the governance towards our executive boards, the governance with regards to the way APSCA's run an organization. We are a member organization, so obviously we're fiduciary responsibilities as well as ethics and integrity. And we are going to talk a bit more about ethics and integrity, as well as our, Rajan's going to talk to us about our 2020 plan, 2021 plan shortly. But underpinning all 3 of those pillars is communications, as well as supporting processes and systems. And we ensure that everything that we do, everything that we're focused on, falls into one of those 3 pillars, which is going to support our vision and our mission as APSCA. So we've been talking about that we're going to talk about for ages, so now we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about code and compliance and the various elements. I didn't reference them in the 2019 review and achievements that we'd had, because I was focusing on them right now. But during 2019, as I mentioned, we brought on a part-time ethics and integrity person who's been working with us for the last couple of months. And we formed an auditor disciplinary board, and that disciplinary board has met twice this year. We do report in our newsletters the type of cases that were presented to the disciplinary board and the outcome. Obviously, we are not reporting names, unlike the Bar Association that puts the names on the back page so you know which lawyer to not be going to anymore. APSCA are not doing that. However, what we do if the individual auditor through that process has been identified and had their membership revoked, we do update their profile on the data system, which can also be seen on the website to be not in good standing. If you know that auditor's name and number, you can check that. And so part of the reason for that is also if you are bringing on new auditors, if you're checking the an audit report, if you're a brand or retailer or a collaborative program, if you're checking an audit report and you can see that, you can check that auditor's number and ensure that they are in good standing and at the right level to be conducting that audit. We talked a bit about it yesterday and at our executive and stakeholder board meeting, and we'll be finishing it tomorrow, when the executive board meets again, what that disciplinary board for audit firms will also look like. We've been very focused on ensuring that the process that we go through, because obviously ethics and integrity is so important to everything that APSCA is doing, making sure that we're doing it in a transparent and credible fashion. When allegations come into us, we do review those allegations. If it comes from the outside, we will circle back with the audit firm and ask the audit firm to conduct an investigation before coming back to us and providing additional information. If the allegation is referencing to an auditor, we do circle back to the auditor and ensure that they have an opportunity to provide feedback and comment to the allegations and questions. Obviously that information is reviewed and analyzed and then presented to the disciplinary board. It is presented to the disciplinary board in an anonymous way. So the auditor name and even the audit firm name is not put on that document, which goes to the disciplinary board. We want to make sure that nobody can feel like they're being mistreated or being discriminated against for whatever reason. We don't even list the country that the event actually occurred in order to keep the integrity high. If we know that one of the members of the disciplinary board may have a conflict of interest, or if in reading the documentation they feel they have a conflict of interest, then obviously they'll be reclused from that discussion and that decision. We do have an appeals board as well. So once the decision has been reached by the disciplinary board, that's communicated off to the individual auditor and ultimately audit firm that went before the disciplinary board. They will then have an opportunity to appeal to that appeals board. So far, our appeals board for auditors has met once and will be meeting for the second time in January. One of the questions that people ask quite a lot is, so how can we find out who was actually suspended, revoked, had their membership revoked, etc.? And so if an auditor has gone through the disciplinary process and has had their membership suspended or revoked, and if you're an audit firm that's currently linked to that auditor, then we will let you know at the point that their membership has been suspended or revoked. And then once it finishes going through the appeals process, or if the auditor chooses not to go through the appeals process, then the person who initially reported it, assuming that we know who it was, then we will circle back with that organization. So if you as an audit firm have disassociated with an auditor due to an integrity issue, once the process has been completed, the adjudication process has been completed, we will inform you as to that end result. But we will not, like if you hire an auditor that's maybe currently going through the disciplinary process, if you've hired them prior to the disciplinary process started, we can't alert you to it until the process has actually been completed. Do you want to?
As far as these processes go, I don't think it is possible to overstate the importance of this aspect of APSCA's work, right? The sole mission of this organization is to professionalize the social compliance audit industry. And professionalism is founded on two pillars: competence and integrity. Right? You want to make sure that everybody out there is competent to do what we call social compliance audits and does so in a way that does not bring into question ethics or integrity. As a profession, you want to make sure that the practice of this stays clean and stays at a high level. So as I mentioned this morning, as professionals, you are duty bound and also bound by the code and standards to report to APSCA instances of violations of the code, whether it be a competence issue or an integrity issue. This is truly a feature of professions, right? As many of you know, I'm a lawyer by background. I have at least one brother in the profession in the room. I could say brother-in-law, but that wouldn't quite work now, would it? And one of the things that we are required to do, and actually an oath that we take, is to abide by a code that requires us to report others who carry that professional denomination if they're in violation of that code, right? All of you are aware, I'm sure, of the impeachment proceedings currently going on in Washington, D.C. And many of you may recall the last time that particular circus pitched its tent was back in the 90s when President Bill Clinton was impeached. He had, as part of the investigation processes, his own attorney. And again, the details are not very important, but you may recall that one of the things was that he was found to have lied under oath, which is a violation of the code, because as an officer of the court, you're not supposed to do that. Clinton was, at the time, a lawyer with a still valid license in the state of Arkansas. His attorney, his own attorney, in order to fulfill that attorney's own oath, had to report to the Bar Association of Arkansas that his client, a lawyer he knows to be barred in that state, acted in violation of the code of conduct for that profession. And Bill Clinton was disbarred and is disbarred in Arkansas as a result. This is something that professionals have to take seriously. Now, this is a guy who took his job very seriously. And he was Clinton's lawyer, right? He defended him. But he recognized that he had an obligation that overrides even that of being the provider of services to that client, and regardless of who that client was, right? So my admonition to you is to take this part of APSCA's role very seriously. And where you find through your own internal investigations, as I said this morning, or through other credible means of information gathering, that there are actors, individuals or firms, that are violating the code that they have signed on to, take your obligation to report that, which is captured in 5.3 of the Code and Standards of Professional Conduct, seriously, and do your part in ensuring that the level of this profession continually rises and stays true to that code and standards that you have all subscribed to.
Thanks very much, Abadis. So we've talked a lot about some of our expectations of you, some of our achievements, but also I wanted to share a few things that APSCA has in order to help you out as well, right? So within APSCA, we keep everything on our website. We try to be publicly transparent. We have our competency framework and our code and standards of professional conduct. Both of those documents, as well as the use of APSCA auditor number, are available from the front page of our website. Try to keep it simple. Let you find them quick and easy. We have our frequently asked questions page, which we're constantly updating as we get additional new questions. We want to try and make it simple for you. Our newsletter, all of our past newsletters going all the way back to, I think our first newsletter was September 2016, are all noted up on our website. And encourage you, if you need some light reading material one night before you go to bed, please hit up the website and read those old newsletters. Makes for some interesting reading. Also on that newsletter page, we also have the webinar that we presented last September, as well as the slides. So, you know, we keep that information there for you to either review, share with people that may not have been able to participate or attend. As we mentioned earlier, the newsletter, you need to subscribe to the newsletter, and we encourage you to do that. We have our Contact Us page as well. If you ever can't remember how to get in touch with us, you can always do it through that Contact Us page. We do our best to try and respond within 24 or 48 hours. But please send us a message through there, and we'll get back on to you straight away. And I already mentioned the webinars. The Auditor Handbook. The Auditor Handbook is available through your audit firms. For audit firms, it's available through the members-only page of the website. If you can't find it or access it, please let Kelly Jo know or send us a message through the Contact Us page, and we can forward that to you. Right now, the Auditor Handbook is available in English, traditional and simplified Chinese, as well as Spanish. The Auditor Handbook is currently in the middle of a major overhaul in preparation of the inclusion of Part 3 of the exam and additional information with regards to Part 2 of the exam. And so that'll be, I'd like to see it be available by the beginning of the year. It's going to be available just as soon as it can. So it's in the final stages of translation at the moment, and then it'll go through a review check before it goes through the beautification process. It is not a simple task to get a document back out. If there's other questions or information that you need to ask us, please let us know. If there's a point of clarification, we're happy to provide that. But encourage you to look at, for you member auditors, the members page of the website.